Word had begun to spread about the far-famed Sky Lord and his savvy fighting skills. Olaf the Red, King of Man and the Isles, raised a fleet to impress Somerled and sailed for Stoma Bay. Ever the clever one, Somerled devised a plan to take it all without the need for war. All he had to do was wed Olaf's daughter, Ragnhild. The rest would follow. So, at Stoma Bay, in disguise, Somerled went out to meet Olaf the Red and win his daughter for a wife. He sailed Olaf's ship under the guise of an envoy. It is said that Ragnhild was the radiant shield maiden of unparalleled beauty. Her hair shined like the noonday sun, golden and gleaming. Her skin was as white as the first snowfall. Her bonny lips were as red as a blooming rose. When Somerled first saw the lass on Olaf's ship, he was struck love-dumb by her beauty. Instantly the handsome lord's heart leapt from him to her, to be kept forever in Ragnhild's keeping. Ragnhild was also overwhelmed by the handsome islander, whose piercing pale blue eyes seemed to bore into her very soul. She had heard of his far-reaching fame, and fell fast for him. When Olaf the Red asked the envoy of his intentions, Somerled replied, "My lord Somerled, Thane of Argyle, sends me to say that he will join your fleet, and aid ye in every way, if ye will give him the heavenly hand of Ragnhild." Olaf could tell who the love-smitten islander really was, and denied him her hand. Somerled, realizing he was found out, smiled and invited Olaf and his bodyguard to go ashore and partake in a fine feast where they could discuss the matter deeper. At the urging of Ragnhild, Olaf the Red agreed and set off for shore. The next day, after another good feast, Olaf set off for his fleet, unmoved in his mind on marriage. By the roll of waves and constant wash of sea-water, the tallow and butter began to work loose. Before the King of Man knew what was happening, his ship began to sink. His crew called out to Somerled on the shore to come and save them. The island chief at once gathered a waiting crew and took out his galley and rowed to the rescue. When he reached the sinking galley, Somerled offered to give help only if Olaf would agree to let him wed the shield maiden Ragnhild. The lovely girl gave a rare giggle and nodded at the handsome clansman in concordance. Olaf the Red had little choice but to give his daughter's hand to the happy chief. All were brought aboard Somerled's Berlin and taken to safety. Meanwhile, MacNeil climbed into the king's sinking galley and put in the plugs, saving the ship. To the amazement of the King of Man, his great galley was returned to him no worse the wear. Around the year 1140, Somerled was wed to Ragnhild, and became more like a son than a son-in-law to Olaf, King of Man and the Isles, who always admired the clan chief's craftiness. Several years passed when the sad news came to Ragnhild and Somerled, 3 nephews of Olaf the Red, for pride and power murdered their uncle and laid claim to half his kingdom. From Norway and lang wood-wrapped ships came Olaf's son Godred to drive the enemies from his father's domain. A gold ring-wearing wolf in his fury, Godred brought blue blades and battered shields to the islands, reclaiming all of Olaf's lands. He killed one of his father's murderers and brought blade to eye, blinding the other 2. With wide-ranging mail-coated warriors, one and all mead-nourished and quick to kill, Godred ill-treated the chiefs and island people of his father's kingdom. A terror to free men, he made lang legacies of want and woe throughout those wave-wrapped lands. A revolt rose among many of the island men and chiefs. They came to bold Sutherland, Thane of Argyle, for aid against that brutal Norse tyrant. The mighty man raised a famed fleet of Berlins, and agreed to lead the islanders in full revolt. Somerled's war host roved the wide waves with tall masts and sails filled full. They came to the islands delivering doom to those grim-faced beard-biters, crumbling bit by bit the cruel Godred's empire. Word reached Godred, and the 2 sea kings' war galleys meant for a sea struggle. Off the coast of Islay, on the night of Epiphany, with fire, bows, axe, and swords, they battled boldly to the last. Warriors wrought ruin on one another all night and into the next day. Many mighty men were lost in that battle to red waves and steel ruin. So furious was that sea fight, neither warlord could claim victory. Both sides lost several ships and suffered countless killed. A truce followed, and the Hebrides were divided between the fierce sea kings. 2 years passed. Somerled and his island war reapers raged from rolling sea to wide rivers, wreaking ruin on much of Godred's commerce. Bringing island men from their Norse bondage, Somerled, famed to the far reaches for his war reaping, that Thane of Argyll, added to his title King of the Isles. Sailing on a sea of wealth, Somerled reworked the rutters of his war fleet, then took those mighty wave-lapping water roamers to face Godred's great fleet again. He was the bold one who led from the front, Lord of the Isles, Thane of Argyll, mocker of war hosts, hewer of crimson-covered men. Somerled sailed with 80 rear-ruttered berlins to man, with banners flapping, and boldly met Godred in the broad bay for the bloodbath. They held hard to those rutters, and rove the wide waves to battle. A famous fight ensued. Ship to ship men clashed and killed. Bows were bent and barbed arrows flew fast and fell hard on heroes, killing when they came. Ships grappled and sea sleighs slid together, washing crimson from stem to stern. Mail-clad men fought for life and limb, hacking and hewing red ruin. Many fell into a cold watery tomb, sinking fast under the weight of their webbed war coats. Worthy of any 12 warriors, the Lord of the Isles killed without care, leaving decks covered deep with crimson corpses. His sword song sang a stinging tale of warriors' woe. With red-splashed cheeks he drove his foes from life and limb. A lion among wolves, that Gallic king was a firm fortress of doom in the thickest of the fray. Spears shattered against his shield, swords could find no place to cut. Axes were turned to their sides, and hard hits fell on all who faced him. His high hero's heart, in the din of death, filled foes with fear, and gained an immortal love from those who followed him. "Somerled! Somerled! Somerled!" became their battle cry. With his rear-ruttered berlins, the Norse longships were outmanoeuvred, and mail-clad clansmen seemed to come from all directions at once. Godred's fleet was picked apart piecemeal, often forced to face 2 and 3 to 1 odds at any given moment. Warships faltered and men fell, pinned into place by hailstorms of flaming fletched death. Godred fled for England, and the Isle of Man was once again under the rule of a Celtic king. Somerled had become the undisputed Lord of the Isles. With great power comes greater enemies, and now the proud King of Scotland, Malcolm IV, became overly apprehensive about Sutherland's growing power. Malcolm sent a huge army to unseat the Lord of the Isles from his mainland hold in Argyll. Somerled, that mocker of war hosts, took to the challenge and fought a pitched battle that left both sides bloodied and a bit broken. An uneasy truce was reached, and for a brief time the two kept peace between them. However, Malcolm IV and his greed-grabbing ministers repeatedly provoked Somerled until he would take no more. Aged into his 60s, the Lord of the Isles went to war once more, with a mighty host of islanders and northern Irish filling his fleet of 164 war galleys. The Sea King made for struggle and red strife. His wild war hosts sailed boldly up the river at the Firth of Clyde. There on that river they beached their galleys and brought steel poison to all who dared not to flee. Fire and sword was to be the answer to all complaints. Somerled's war horde, deliverers one and all of mournful fates, marched blade ready to the Knock, a small hill between Renfrew and Paisley. At the Knock, the High Steward of Scotland, with a smaller force, levelled stout spears to stop the invaders' onslaught. During the bloody conflict of Renfrew, Somerled and his eldest son fell from kings to corpses. Some say he was slain deep in the enemy's nest, others that a treacherous dirk from a trusted family member was used to murder the mighty king of hosts. Whatever the cause, his fall undid the courage of his followers, and their shield wall quickly splintered against the stout spears of the Scots. Raven's meat was made of the fleeing invaders. The river that brought them ran red with Irish and Islander carcasses. For many a year long would be the grief over the slain sea-washed warriors. Though Somerled and his eldest son fell to the war's red way, he left lions living to carry on that bloodline. For centuries, Somerled's descendants would ever be a source of strife to the kings of Scotland. Ronald, surviving son of Somerled, was the father of Donald, who was the father of Angus More, father of Angus Og, father of John. John fathered Donald, Lord of the Isles, who, like his ancestor Somerled, also had ambitions toward the mainlands of Scotland.